That's all jealous. I like it. Um, awesome, everybody. 2:03. We'd like to get started 3 minutes after the hour. So thank you guys for joining. Really appreciate it. I'm really excited. I think it's gonna be a fun conversation. We do this every week for the last like 2 years, and it's a lot of talking to corporate sustainability people. And now we're talking to two people who a lot of corporate sustainability people should know. So Jenny Morgan is at Tradewater and is also the author of Cancel Climate. And she'll tell us all about Tradewater. Lena is at Climeworks, which is a direct air capture business, and used to work in corporate sustainability at Adyen, and a little over a year ago moved over. Very quick description, but Tradewater destroys refrigerants and caps oil and gas wells, and Climeworks is evolving and maturing, but maybe is best known for direct air capture plants and really growing that business. Tell me if I butchered that. Did I get that directionally accurate? Awesome, cool. So I wanted to start actually with you, Lena. And first of all, thank you for joining. Last minute switcheroo over at Climeworks, so I appreciate it. But this is going to be fun because you actually worked at Adyen for a long time in sustainability. Adyen is a large European global payments company with billions in revenue. You did all the corporate sustainability roles that anybody on that side of the table would be familiar with. You moved into Climeworks and the direct air capture about a year ago. This is post Trump. This is post sustainability pullback. This is post IRA cancellations. This is post like, wow, the challenges are going to be clear for that industry. And you decided to make that move, which I thought was really interesting. Tell me more about what you were doing at Adyen and why you thought that was a really important time to move into this particular industry.
Yeah, and thanks for the opportunity to chat today. Yeah, you captured my background pretty well, at least most recently before Climeworks. I was really responsible for building out the environmental sustainability strategy for Adyen, and that include everything from reporting, measurement, reporting, some of the supplier engagement work, et cetera, all the things that I'm sure many folks on the call know very well. And as part of my role, I also was responsible for some of our contribution work in sort of the beyond value chain mitigation. And Adyen had an interesting way of approaching this, but in short, I got exposed to the carbon removal market in my role, and was really intrigued by just the range of different technologies, projects, the amount of momentum and work that was really happening. And also was thinking a lot about the fact that we need to get more buyers into the space and lower that bar of entry. And so I was really drawn to join the other side of the table and come to Climeworks, which, as you mentioned, is a developer of carbon removal technology, but also simultaneously is working to really build a broader market and make sure that that there is a sustainable and healthy industry behind this market for the medium and long term. So that
Yeah.
was the drive behind the move.
I wrote this book a couple years ago called Attainable Sustainability, and I had a chapter on offsets. And I think that chapter started with carbon offsets are the gateway drug to sustainability. Meaning, like, if you know nothing about sustainability, maybe you like saw a John Oliver special, or you kind of heard of an offset, and like you kind of got brought into it. When you first started buying credits at Adyen, what was the impetus for those purchases? And then how would you say that evolved over the last couple of years, including since you've left?
Yeah, I would say, going back a few years, I think a lot of this work was very focused on catalytic impact, right? You had early stage projects, and really the goal behind engaging with them was to to support the work and acknowledge that we need durable removals as part of the equation and part of the net zero journey, and really to help show that demand signal as big or as small as it can be, right? And I think Adyen is, relatively speaking, a primarily a technology-based company. The footprint isn't massive, certainly, but still, it is there, and I think it was also a way to show that even as a smaller player in the space, you can still participate and still kind of dip a toe in, right? And so I think the impetus was to really start small, and be thoughtful and figure out and learn the market and kind of get a sense of the dynamics and where that impact could be felt. So that was some of the motivation. And I think over time, that experience led to kind of doubling down in some cases on projects that were kind of showing traction and showing results, right? And less of that kind of very nascent early stage project support. So I think that trend has continued and evolved, and I think it's sort of progressed for companies like Adyen, but we also see that behavior playing out, I think, broadly in the market as well.
Yeah, I mean that's nice framing. Jenny, you worked at Microsoft before coming to Tradewater about 4 years ago. I think if I remember, kind of similar experience. Microsoft was buying from places like Tradewater. You learned about it. You decided it was an interesting place to join. Tell a little bit of that story. And as you were thinking about Tradewater going back 4 years, I don't even remember what the state of things like DAC was at the time, but Tradewater is almost, if DAC is on the spectrum of in the credits market, experimental technology, we hope that stuff comes true and miracles happen. I don't mean that in a bad way. Whatever. We hope that stuff comes true and scales properly. Trade water is like very easier for everyone to understand. You got bad refrigerants, let's crush them. You got an oil and gas well leaking stuff, let's cap it. So much more mature, probably of a problem set. What attracted you to that world 4 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Microsoft, I was responsible for our DI work and I sat in Azure. And I was privileged to be working there at a time where the leadership and the organization was excited about making big swings around equity. And because sustainability and equity impact each other so much, but they're often viewed as separate impact initiatives, I really wanted to influence that a bit more from the inside. And so I heard about Tradewater actually on a podcast, and because of the reasons why you've listed here, it really aligned with my personality. I like to see results today. I'm somewhat impatient and I like to feel like it's moving. And so while there are some incredible long-term solutions that align with that type of personality and patient type, I really wanted to like, let's do this every day. Once we're done, repeat, go. And so um, when I heard about Tradewater on a podcast, and I had already read Project Drawdown's book and was really aware of the problem, and then found an organization that had the solutions nailed down and was able to scale them, then I started funding some of the projects through Microsoft's initiatives and was able to get some money that way. And then the team was just hungry and passionate, and I saw that as my next chapter. So I joined the team about 4 years ago.
Yeah. We met kind of around that time because I joined a carbon accounting company in 22. You joined Tradewater in 22. So we met in 22 or 23. And I think you always had a really good way of talking about the pros and cons of offsets, about the mix that buyers might want to see across offsets. So we talked a little about, even when we were preparing for this, you talked about like the balance between where Climeworks sits and where Tradewater sits. And I forgot how you phrased it, but it was like something around stopping the leak and then fixing the pipes. But talk a little bit about like how you think about the offset market and where a buyer would look at trade waters, say, here's the impact that a trade water would have, and then where that same buyer might bring in something like direct air capture or other technologies into the mix.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of carbon markets. You have the compliance market, which is the stick, and then you have the voluntary market, which is the carrot. And I really like those types of balances where you have boundaries, but then you're also rewarding behavior. And so that's why I personally really believe wholeheartedly that the carbon market has proven to be very successful and has a lot of opportunities to continue to amplify the work that we all do. So big fan of carbon offsets and carbon market in conjunction with other initiatives. And then to talk about these long-term and near-term solutions, this analogy that you're alluding to is if you left the faucet on in your bathroom, your roommate did, you would never do this, but your roommate did, left the faucet on, and then the water is now flowing over the bathtub. I'm turning the faucet off, and then Lena is going in and actually putting down towels so that both would need to be done. If you only did one, you left the faucet on and you're just throwing towels in there, that's absurd. And then also, if you just, turn the faucet off and left it, that would also be damaging. And so they really, I never view a climate solution as competitive in this market, even though we are selling climate action. I see it as I'm glad they're doing this and I'm doing this, and we all need to be doing it together. And if you really want to be smart about it, if you're a corporate buyer, you're putting time on a scale and seeing how your investments and solutions align with your emissions and how your companies will scale and grow and evolve.
Yeah. Tradewallet is also in a position where you're much more price accessible than technologies like direct air capture. And I don't have the latest here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I would still bet it's an order of magnitude cheaper to buy credit from something like Tradewater than an offtake with something like Climeworks, which still all has its place. But I'm curious, Jenny, when you and I met, and a lot of my work at the time was helping clients buy credits, almost like a broker. Clients were looking for a not a certification, a stamp called carbon neutral that they can plaster everywhere. And we had some clients who I haven't talked to them in a couple of years since I left that world. Like, I would bet on not buying credits anymore. And they're just like, hey, I want to put carbon neutral on my restaurant. I want to stick carbon neutral go forward commitment. It's a report. What is the cheapest way I can do that? And they were looking for the cheapest way they can do that. And they also said that they wanted credible, but credible took a backseat to cheapest. I bet that has changed a lot for a lot of reasons. A, I bet a lot of people who are just trying to get that stamp have left the market and are looking for marketing benefits otherwise. And B, I bet the people who are still in the market are now flip-flopping and saying credible over cheap any day. How have you seen the evolution and Tradewater? I'm not saying you're cheap, but you're always credible. How have you seen the evolution of what buyers have looked for over the last 4 years that you've been there?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of institutions that help buyers understand what credible is. We have rating agencies, we have the ICVCM. So there's a lot of ways to help buyers at least take a first step of knowing who they should be looking at, what types of projects, what types of methodologies. I will say, though, cheaper and cheap are very different words. And so that kind of cheap a jargon that's been associated with some mitigation projects, I think has been really difficult for some, I'm not to get my violin out or something, but I think it has given a perception of like I've been asked if I could sell our credits for $3 or $1, and it that just isn't reality of actually finding these gases, transporting them to a destruction facility, incinerating them so that they're permanently destroyed, having that validated, having that audited. The facility itself has to be audited. Then you have to put it on the registry to be issued. So there's a lot of things that go into ensuring you're getting something credible, but then also making sure you're getting it for a fair price. And so, yeah, I think that understanding why I think project developers should be very upfront with how their credits are priced. And so that's what I always share the books with whomever is asking because people need to know, am I going to get what I want, credible, and am I going to get it for a fair price? And so that's something that I think transparency is always something that should continue to be
Do
improved
your
upon.
prices change like the scale? Scale obviously helps. We'll turn to Climeworks in a second, but scale obviously helps new technologies. The more plants you build, the bigger they are, the cheaper it is to make a credit. For you guys, you can also see scale happening because you get better at capping wells. You get a larger contract. Like, do you expect your prices to always and forever go down because of scale, or do you think they rise because you have hard costs that increase? Like, how do the costs that buyers will pay for trade water, how are those expected to change over time?
Yeah, our pricing model is really interesting, which is another reason why I felt confident about working at Tradewater, let alone just the solution, but working at Tradewater. Our pricing model brings in all of the costs associated with doing the work, but then a small percentage of it is always put into scaling the work. And so a lot of our buyers really like to know that the hyperlink on their 2021 impact report still goes to Tradewater because we're reinvesting in the work rather than going paycheck to paycheck. And I think that that's a really interesting business model and one that helps instill longevity and scalability in the work. I would say mostly our pricing is associated with inflation. Like we get charged more by whomever is, validating the credits. And so we're usually increasing our prices by about $1 or so, just simply to cover any increased costs. The registries are charging project developers more. A lot of project developers have to pay rating agencies to get on their platform, depending on who you're working with. And so there's a lot of costs that are associated with proving the solution is still one of the best ones you should be picking. So a lot of the costs go on the project developer.
Yeah. A quick note for everyone, but the chat is open and the Q&A is open. So I've got questions all day, but feel free to chime in at any point. Lena, talk a little about how Climb works and how your business model has been changing a bit. When I first heard of you a few years ago, it was we are this innovative, maybe largest scale direct air capture facility, and we are vacuuming carbon out of the air and sticking it underground. I think the business has changed over the last year. Talk about the reasons for that change and how has it changed, or you've begun to evolve into maybe more of a marketplace for credits, if that's fair.
Yeah. So, Climeworks obviously has gotten its start as a developer of direct air capture technology. We're still very much doing that. We operate two of the world's first commercial plants today and have an active project development pipeline of future projects as well. And I think I touched on this earlier, but as we sort of look ahead and think about what this market needs to look like medium to long term. Over the last 2 years, the Climeworks team saw an opportunity to play a wider role in the carbon removal space broadly. And so what that's looked like is, and maybe just to pause quickly, the carbon removal ecosystem, it spans a lot of different types of pathways or ways of permanently draining that bathtub that Jenny described earlier, right? So you have everything from more kind of nature-based and traditional types of projects, going all the way to more novel technologies and more kind of engineered solutions that are in their earliest stage where you have more measurable types of solutions being developed. And so for Climeworks over the last 2 years, there was a moment where we were getting a lot of questions by our DAC customers about other types of carbon removal technologies. Who's the Climeworks of enhanced weathering, or some of these other types of carbon removal technologies. And so we've since really branched out and developed a whole network of supplier and project developer partners in other types and other forms of carbon removal to really help buyers access a range and a portfolio and really help kind of manage that process on behalf of corporate buyers.
Yeah. How is I know you only joined a year ago, and but after the Trump election, a lot of immediately IRA was pulled out, and a lot of I don't know direct air capture specifically, but a lot of carbon removal technology was reliant on tax credits and funding coming from the IRA. What kind of impact that have on your business?
So they're actually is still some pretty strong policy incentives, and even in the US. So there's the 45Q tax credit, which predates the IRA and is honestly surprisingly, one of the one of the largest in the world, and that's for permanently storing carbon underground. So that has held. I think the other piece
That's an
that
American tax credit. That's in the U.S.
correct. Yeah, federal tax credit. So that still holds, and I think will be a really important part of how this space evolves in the U.S. and in the kind of near and medium term. What has obviously changed is, we've seen a very, I think, different approach from the Department of Energy, which has been a big supporter of all types of technologies, and some of that kind of pausing and reevaluation of, well, which areas are they going to continue doubling down on and investing in, and which not, are not part of that for the time being. I think that's where we're definitely seeing some ripple effects, and that's kind of shaking out differently. But yeah, that's had definitely an impact in how this space looks in the U.S. But I think, if you look at kind of the numbers and look beyond the headlines, there's been quite a lot of development and progress, US, North America, and Canada, and Europe more broadly. So we're definitely seeing still a lot of momentum, and I think optimism, and I think it's also forced, some changes to rethink business models and plans and strategies too.
Yeah. I want to ask you both a bit about the types of buyers who are coming to you lately. So again, when I was doing this kind of stuff, everybody was buying. It was great. I recommend being a seller of sustainability stuff in 23. It was a blast. That is not true anymore. Now, there might be similar demand levels more from more sophisticated companies and less from less sophisticated companies, but I think the whole demand has gone down a little bit. Talk, I don't know, maybe Lena than Jenny, but about the types of buyers you're spending most of your time with now? Is it the hyperscalers? Jenny, you worked at Microsoft. Obviously, Microsoft has been a major buyer of credits for a very long time. And then a couple months ago, made an announcement that they're buying less. And you talked a lot about how your whole market should not exist off of one buyer. So good or bad, I don't know. But like they did their part, and now it's time for other people to step up. Like what types of buyers are you spending your time with now? And how are new entrants coming into the fold? Like, what types of companies are starting to buy credits for the first time that have not before?
Yeah, I think, I mean, it really has been a very diverse buyer group, I would say. I think we saw a lot of early momentum from a lot of tech-based companies. I think you can point to sort of, higher higher profits per ton, and sort of a willingness and ability to pay from that sector, just based on the nature of,
Hmm.
their footprints and their businesses, right? So I think a lot of that sort of early market leading activity kind of stem from there. Obviously, yeah, Microsoft and others really taking charge. But I think, if we really look over the last couple of years, it's that buying group has really expanded. I mean, you see industrial players also participating. I mean, we think earlier this year, Airbus, made a pretty large announcement with, substantial offtake in the space. We work with Schneider Electric, for example. So lots of, kind of more very established and kind of traditional, very physical infrastructure type companies are really starting to play in the space. And I think there are various reasons for that. But yeah, we see, I think, pretty good representation from just about every major sector, from tech to finance, professional services, industry, et cetera.
And what's changed? Like, what has forced that change? Is it just maturing of the market, or more people have heard about it, or more compliance regimes have forced these buyers to come in? Like tech companies, it always kind of blew my mind that software companies like Salesforce and Microsoft are the best sustainability brands out there, because like if I were trying to wave my magic wand and solve climate change, I would not start with tech. Even at every data center on earth, and I still would not start with tech. Start with food or transportation or industrial or something like that. But what do you think is force these other, not force, encourage or allow these other industries to come in? Is it maturity? Is it marketing? Is it compliance? Is it something else?
I think, well, it's still largely a voluntary driven market, right? So I would say the thing that most of these have in common is some sort of voluntary net zero commitment, right? Which really sort of outlines how to approach a lot of these different market mechanisms. So if you sort of look at that, I mean, sure, there's, I think this change we've seen in sort of this increase and diversification in the buyers is a combination of things. I think, the voluntary space still holds. I think we're starting to see how that's translating into some of these emerging compliance schemes in different parts of the world. I think the market has also matured. We have third-party certifications and standards and ways to measure and verify and validate that, this work is actually happening. And we're also seeing, I think, more just clearer guidance from even some of the voluntary frameworks, like SBTI, for instance, kind of starting to spell out, this is what net zero looks like, and here are the specific timeframes and milestones. And so I think companies are seeing that writing on the wall and starting to, dip their toes in and, maybe kind of see this as a ramp up, right? They're kind of building up some internal muscles on how to do this.
Yeah. Jenny, what about you?
I mean, I mean this in the best way possible. I think the reason why it is a lot of tech is obviously tech has a lot of money, but then also that the culture of tech, and this could be completely biased, but the culture of tech is very innovative and growth mindset thinking. And so you can't have a growth mindset unless you think about the way that climate change will impact your business. For the good or bad. And so I think that culturally, tech has that way of thinking of what is the next 15, 30, 50 going to look like. Whereas, and this is where my bias shows up, maybe thinking of a small business, for example, small business isn't thinking like that. They're thinking about how much they're going to make this week based on last week's numbers, and more in the present day. And so I think maybe that's why culturally we're seeing much more of an investment if you put capital and wealth aside. That
I'm gonna lean in on the profits one. I feel
Okay,
like a company like Airbus or some giant industrial you've never heard of that's been around for 100 years probably thinks it's long term in any of them. But
sure.
when Salesforce is like, I just want to go have more friends on Capitol Hill and hire bougie granola crunchy engineers. Sure, here's $50 million to credits. Let's all move right along. I'm gonna go with the profits one being a big driver of that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did preface it that I was probably biased. But yeah, I don't know. And I mean, from a buyer demographic standpoint, Tradewater has all different types of buyers. I mean, when I first joined, I was like, all of our buyers are going to be pharmaceutical and grocer. Like, who wants stuff cold? That's who I'm talking. And then maybe I'll get into a little bit of aerospace when I, have a year under my
Mhm.
belt. Like that was what I totally thought my world was going to look like. And while we do have those partners, I mean, it's all over the map from breweries to manufacturers to, data centers to big tech. It's all over.
Yeah. Do you think where do you think it'll continue to change? Do you think smaller and smaller businesses, not SMBs, but like, mid-sized enterprises are going to become buyers for some reason? Do you think a lot of your attention is going to go to, hey, if Airbus and Microsoft are the ones buying, how do you get Airbus and Microsoft to buy more? Where do you think the growth comes from?
I mean, so I ran our small and medium-sized business arm in the first part of my employment at Tradewater, and the the sales cycle for a small business and the sales cycle for a large multinational corporation was the exact same. All entities were putting as much thought as everyone else. And so I just started to see that you get a bigger bang for your buck if you spend 9 months on a partnership and it's with someone that's in the, their earnings are in the millions, billions, trillions, then you're going to be able to really unlock something incredible. And so,
Mm.
um, yeah, I mean, staying consistent, having a really strong relationship with industry leaders and with those businesses. But I mean, I still give the same amount of attention to small and medium-sized businesses because their voice matters. But the fact that our entire economy is built on small and medium-sized businesses, that was very attractive to me. If we could get that 90% of the economy investing in climate action, we don't really need to be maybe people wouldn't be griping about Microsoft leaving for a little while because our
Do you
entire
think that's,
yeah,
do you think that's, do you expect that to happen? I mean, I see a lot of challenges with getting SMBs involved, not even money, but
yeah.
more time and attention. Like you need someone to have a call with you and think about it. And even if they have the money to like do something and consider it and look at the options. And SMBs have less time and attention to give than large corporations who could just like, Salesforce has dedicated offset purchasers, and even smaller companies have dedicated sustainability people who can spend 10% of the time buying offsets. So you think SMBs can play a role here?
I think that there's a different relationship between like personifying a brand with large companies. Like they're like, well, Microsoft thinks, or I can pick on someone else. Well, Target thinks. Whereas a small business, it's like Susan and Fred think. And so I think it's while relationship building is incredibly important on all facets, I think that small and medium-sized businesses, if you're engaging with someone that's passionate about equity and impact and climate action, then you're speaking to them and it's more on like a philanthropic type of conversation, even though this isn't built on nonprofits. But um, I think that it's just the way that you talk about it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Can you both talk a little bit about how buyers are buying? What I mean is, a couple of years ago, I was at a carbon accounting company. We'd say, your emissions are X. Do you want to offset them? Here's a couple of reasons why you would do that. They'd say, cool, what would be the price? And we experimented with it a couple of times, but basically what we landed on is saying, well, $20 a ton, and we'll come up with a portfolio for you. If you want fancy stuff, it's $40 a ton. You want fancy stuff if you're a fancy person, and $20 is good enough otherwise. And we took our margins off that, but it went through us. And what I did was I went and I called, Jenny at Tradewater, and I called some other broker, and I called some other product developer and said, I'm trying to piece the thing together. I need my cost to be, 14 or $16 so we can make some profits and move right along. That's how a lot of purchases happen. There was another category of company that worked with uh, groups like Frontier Climate, being at least the largest that I know, where especially if you're a customer of a carbon accounting like company like Watershed, they just said, "Hey, you want to buy credits? No problem. One thing you can do is put your money into Frontier Climate, organized by Stripe and participated in by Alphabet and McKinsey and Meta, putting whatever number of tens or hundreds of billions or whatever the number was into offtake agreements." I don't know if Climeworks ever was or was not part of that ecosystem, but that was a buying group essentially to purchase things that were not accessible or too expensive or too difficult to access for the majority of people. Very, very few people would go out and buy these things directly. I think also people would go to maybe, I don't know if the right word is a brokerage or a marketplace like CNOT or Patch, and would, if you were a little more sophisticated, buy things that way. What has changed in how buyers access your products? Maybe Jenny and Lena, but are you working directly with the corporate, and the corporate is calling you up and saying, I need 1 million tons? Are you selling through buying organizations? Are you selling on marketplaces? Like, where are buyers accessing you?
both. So I work with
Yeah.
intermediaries and directly. It just depends on the I mean, the benefits that the organization is getting through working through an intermediary. So it's all consolidated. So if they do have a very portfolio driven strategy, then working with an intermediary makes a lot of sense. Even if you want to do all your separate due diligence, just like procurement, you're transacting with one entity. But then I have people that want to go directly to the source. I have customers that want to do site visits and see wells plugged and see the warehouse. So again, it just kind of comes down to people. Like all of this comes down to people. Yeah, I think it's just kind of understanding the appetite, the time, the resources, and then just like the silly red tape that an organization may have that they have to transact with one entity.
What is any better or worse for your business in terms of like if I called you and I said, "Hey, I got a guy, he wants some offsets." Do you want them to go directly to you? Do you want them to go to an intermediary? Do you like what are the benefits of maybe a different way of asking it is what are the benefit to that buyer of going to you versus to the intermediary?
I mean, I can help a lot with the storytelling by working directly with a buyer. And you can ask me anything and I'll tell you immediately. I mean, uh, but I honestly don't care. I mean, I have great relationships with intermediaries, so I just see them as my contact, and they know all of the stories to share. I guess it is a little bit of a black box, I guess, because I'm not on the phone between the two. So I like to always make myself available for intermediaries, which I think is a value proposition for intermediaries to work with Tradewater just because we're here, we're transparent. But I don't, climate action's climate action in my book, so I don't really mind either one.
Yeah. Lena, but what about you? How have people accessed Climeworks in the past? Is it more difficult to access things because there's fewer credits and harder to understand? And how is that changing as your business evolves?
Yeah, so I mean, historically, on the direct air capture side, that was all direct engagement with Climeworks. But now, I mean, we are essentially through Climeworks Solutions, we are playing the role of an intermediary, right, interfacing between buyers and then our product developer partners. And so I think it's been really interesting to see that because I think there's certainly the types of buyers that want to understand the storytelling and the narrative and the co-benefits, right, really deeply. And we're able to kind of provide that. But there's also a lot of buyers who don't have the in-house, maybe, team of X number of people who can diligence and vet and make decisions on how they want to assess, you know, different types of quality or, various criteria themselves. And so they would like, or they're looking for some support for that. They may also be looking for support around actually managing the deliveries, right? When you enter into a medium term offtake, oftentimes, those are future credits that have to be delivered. They may be delayed. If you have a net zero claim that you're trying to make or work towards, you're looking for that delivery, right? And so being able to also kind of help with that portfolio management is a big part of the work that we do and kind of taking that off of, a one or two or a three-person sustainability team who might not have the bandwidth and the capacity.
Yeah. Really quick, we do this Beekly webinar pretty much every single week. I posted the next four in the chat, but next week we have our best attended one ever with the Chief Customer Success Officer of CDP. So if you report to CDP or are interested, that's on that topic. The week after is with Michael Rockwell at the Hamilton Company, a healthcare manufacturing firm. And then the sustainability lead at Box, cloud storage software and then the sustainability lead at Scholastic, a children's publishing firm. They make a lot of children's books, apparently a lot of money in kids' books, which is crazy to me because all my kids' books just come off of different people's stoops in Brooklyn. It turns out people pay for these things. So hopefully some of those are interesting and valuable to you. I'm curious, Lena, you mentioned kind of the support you might give in terms of a small team deciding what to buy or how to buy it or whatever. What are some of the trade-offs that you see customers considering in their purchases? They come to you and they say, well, first they come to you and why are they buying? Is net zero the biggest driver? Is it employee engagement that's the biggest driver? Because that probably informs some of the trade-offs that they want to make. And then what are those trade-offs? Obviously, cost and budget is one, but if I'm coming in and say, hey, I've got 100 grand to spend. What kind of conversation are we having?
Yeah, I think, I mean, typically it obviously varies company to company, but I think, yeah, depending on the sector they're in, the business case they're trying to make, the sometimes trade-offs may be around location, right? Where are these projects? Are they in relevant geographies, or maybe someone is willing to take on a premium to kind of align the sources of their emissions with some of the types of projects, maybe to see those community benefits sort of kind of cycle back into, places that are relevant for their operations. So, yeah, I mean, cost is obviously a big driver. And like I said, there's such a spectrum across the carbon removal space, right? You have a range of so many different technologies. So really kind of thinking about the ones that may best align to particular industry, or I think it's, comes down to some of those co-benefits. But yeah, ultimately price, average blended price per ton and total budget is going to be a big driver. And then it's like thinking about, okay, well, how do you maximize your impact and the goals that you've set out within that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Jenny, when folks come to you, they're not buying from a portfolio. They're talking about buying from Tradewater. What are those conversations like? Are they coming to you often? I want Tradewater, just picking up the phone and placing an order, or are they exploring you and like talking to a lot of other other businesses who might offer these kinds of things? Other, geez, what's the word? Other developers, excuse me. Are they calling you and a bunch of other developers all at the same time and asking a lot of questions? Or are they saying, "Oh, heard of Tradewater, give me some details, but I'm ready to go"?
Yeah, I think we're pretty well known in the super pollutant space. And super pollutants are, it's a term that's being used much more often, I think, than it was, 5 years ago. And so if people are curious about addressing, I mean, just some of these projects that are just really easy to see the impact, and there's not really any need to scratch your head or wait, which is, we talked about that earlier, but it's really clear to see the impact that super pollutant mitigation has. And so I think just trade water comes up in that conversation. Um, I guess what I've seen a little bit as a difference is the awareness of our project type has increased. That doesn't necessarily mean that all of the nuances are understood, but I think people know it was introduced to most people with Project Drawdown, and then it was introduced more when they saw another partner use it, or purchase partner with us, or they saw us on a panel, and then they kind of are ready to talk. I'd say the due diligence side, which is when an organization is really doing a bunch of research on your projects, I would say that has increased a bit since I've worked at Tradewater. There's a lot more time spent digging into the details, asking every
And is
question.
it because people have become more knowledgeable or more fearful of getting it wrong, or what is it?
I guess if like this is my conversation of hot takes, I would say that a lot of people are using AI, and AI is asking questions, and they're like, I should ask them that. So sometimes the questions like, this is very knowledgeable, but out of left field. And so I kind of feel like you and Claude discussed this
Came up
previously.
with this together.
Yeah.
Does it lead to better conversations, or is it like that's
If
not a
it's
helpful
if
question to
the
anybody?
It depends. If it's like genuine interest, then I love that. Like, let's get everybody like come over, let's see this, let's get every more people from the Tradewater team on the call. If it's just like again, like just these kind of like you're looking for the thread to pull, then I think that just gets us into running in circles. And so I have gotten into running in circles about a very random topic.
That also never leads anywhere good because
Right,
no product is perfect,
right.
right? Like I've got these Altoids in front of me. I was asking the seller of these Altoids about like the location of this sugar mill like I'm not going to buy the Alt. I'm not. I don't. If I care that much, it means I actually don't care and don't want them. Like there, you got to be transparent about everything. You need to be able to answer these questions. But the person who's trying to look for a reason not to buy is going to not buy.
Yeah, I was on a panel on Tuesday, and someone in the audience, respectfully, brought up like, aren't some super pollutants leaking, cooling the planet? And I just there's just some rabbit holes I don't really want to like. I don't really
Yeah,
jump down that. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Maybe I don't know. Maybe, we're still gonna kill them all, but I'm not sure what to say. We're gonna destroy them all.
yeah.
Um, oh, perfect. I want to, as we wrap up in the next couple minutes here, I want to kind of talk about where this goes in the future, and I want to scenario plan it out a little bit. I don't know if you want to tie your answer to political wins or if you want to tie policy wins. I don't know if you want to tie them to just trends you're already seeing, but this market has been through it. It has been through it the last couple of years. So have adjacent sustainability markets, carbon accounting, and others, but this one has been through it. There has been very public bad press about carbon offsets in general. There have been very public positive support for these markets and how important they are in broader fights against climate change. The money in it has fluctuated over the last couple of years based on trends or what corporates care about. They're moving out of one category into another, whatever. The market has been through it. Where do you think this could go in the next couple of years? If you were to try to be an objective third party scenario planning, or if you're a buyer trying to figure out what to do so these aren't one off things, where could this market go? Maybe Lena than Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's come a long way in a lot of different categories over the last few years. I think it's, with time, with experience, with maturity, it's getting it's moving in the right direction, right? We're seeing more participants, we're seeing more clarity on what the guidance is, right? It's less vague. I think we're starting to see how this trickles into, compliance markets that are looking at the voluntary, side as a signal. So I think it's going in the right direction. Is it going as fast? I mean, you can debate that. Probably not, not as fast as we want. But I think, the train has left the station, and I think I also think a lot about, following the emissions, right? Like, where are the emissions, net new emission sources coming from? Like, what needs to be addressed? What are those hard to abate emissions that can't be addressed while we decarbonize and like look at all the other tools in the toolkit here? So yeah, I think it's maturing and becoming a healthier market. We do have a lot of participants. So in some ways, it is a crowded space for relatively still small and early space. So maybe some consolidation. I mean, just personal thinking there. Like, I think that would probably help simplification, right? So making this easier for people to understand how to access and what that looks like. So I think feel like all these sort of health indicators are moving positively. And I hope we just continue to see more comfort in terms of like how corporates can participate. Um,
Yeah, Jenny.
Yeah, I've seen a lot more collaboration between buyers and between suppliers, and I love that. I have a huge stance against polarization, in all facets of our society, and so I love partnerships. I think that they're vital, and there's been a lot more appetite for that. And so that's been really exciting to see. I think that that means growth and stability and scale. Lots more compliance markets popping up. I think the what I would like to see as a trend is kind of getting back to the comfort in talking about what we're doing and what needs to be done, and then what we're doing right now, and then what needs to be done in the future. I think companies have shifted a bit on how comfortable they speak about it. And so I guess I'm always just telling everyone like so much action is happening. I just think that there's a lot of fear still, of just being scrutinized, by whomever. And so I think that there's, going to be more collaboration between the supply side and the buyer side of helping really share the story so that you aren't putting yourself at risk. You're actually showcasing how you live and breathe your company's values and your own. So that's been something that I think if we crack that and move forward, then we can really start to see this market continue to grow.
Beautiful. Well, Lena, Jenny, thank you very much to both of you. I think both TradeWorks and Tradewater and Climeworks are doing, that sounded wrong when I said it, are doing wonderful, wonderful work. So I really appreciate you spending the hour with us. Everyone, reach out to Jenny, Lena, they're available to you, and hopefully we'll see you next week on the CDP Beekly. Thank you all very much.
So
Bye.
thanks so much.